Okay, so while everyone's putting their introductions in the chat, I'll get started quick. Welcome everyone for joining us today. It's great to see a good turnout here. It's wonderful to see some faces. And even for those who aren't able to turn on your camera, if you're eating lunch and whatnot, I just appreciate you taking the time to be here. This Zoom will be recorded and shared on our YouTube channel. So if you have someone that you'd like to share the recording with, or if you want to reference something later, you certainly can. Also, hopefully at the end of the agenda, you can see that we'll be gathering in person in early October. And so look forward to seeing many of you in person then. So just kind of going through some quick housekeeping with the agenda. Top things are reminders that with the Grasslands Initiative, anyone is automatically considered a partner if you're interested in what we're doing. That being said, groups are invited to become formal partners. On the agenda, there's a link to fill out a form that tells us that, yep, you'd like to be recognized as a formal partner. And we can indicate that on our website and do a little bit more interaction with you. Going down to partner communication and coordination projects. So we know at the Grassland Summit, and since then we've talked about some of our top goals of the initiative, one of which is increasing that partner to partner communication. So a few things that we're doing related to that are podcasts. And I wanted to quickly share my screen and show you where to find those. If you're somebody that regularly uses podcasts, you can find them on Spotify, Apple, your usual routes. But if not, if you just want to be able to find them on our website, this is the SDGrassinitiative.org website. And on here, you can go to resources. And of course, it's going to be slow right now. Okay. And here you can find the previous newsletters if you're curious, or maybe you're wanting to submit an article and are wondering how to do or how to format it. There's some examples there. We also have our podcast here. So right now, I think we're at about 15 different entities that have been highlighted. And you can find them here and share them from here as well. There's also a little bit of information about Concurrent Resolution 605, which we've addressed before. Okay. Sorry, let me bring my notes back. In regards to that newsletter, we do ask that if you have an article you'd like to send to me, send it by August 19th. So these articles are pretty open-ended, kind of like the partner updates that we get during these calls. If you want to share about an event that you have done or are planning to do, about a project that you've completed, perhaps there's a new hire in your organization that you'd like to share about, that can go in the newsletter. We also started a little section to highlight if you have job openings. So we welcome those as well in our newsletter. So submit those to me by August 19th and it'll go out in early September. Another communication piece is that on our website, we have a calendar where we can share about different events happening around the state. If you'd like to send those to me, I will absolutely get them on there. Of course, I'm also trying to add them as I see them, but I hate to miss anything. So if you have any public events that you'd like shared, please let me know. Another little bit of housekeeping information related to the overall Grasslands Initiative is our steering committee. After we sent out our last newsletter, many of you saw that we had openings for new steering committee members on our board. So the steering committee is made up of 10 individuals who meet once or twice a month, as well as communicate via email to help direct where we're going with the Grasslands Initiative. Part of the plan when we started the Grasslands Initiative is to make sure that we rotate new individuals in to ensure that we're getting fresh perspectives and hearing from everyone else. So we have a few new individuals joining. We hate to lose the individuals that we do have on the steering committee, but I'm sure that they'll continue to be involved in the work groups and other avenues as well. So first of all, I guess I'd like to recognize Kurt Foreman, Angela Ehlers, and Jim Falstich for all the time that they have contributed. If we were in person, we could applaud them, but I think we can all just recognize in our heart that they've done a lot for it. And we'll have 3 new individuals helping to direct things moving forward as they kind of are transitioning in to those roles. So we have Chuck Pyle with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Shauna Cochran with Perkins County Conservation District, and Jeff Zimfrich with Passkill on Beaver Creek. So welcome, and those are other individuals that you can reach out to. If you go to our website, you can find steering committee members. So if there's something you'd like to discuss and it's more convenient or comfortable to bring it up to one of them, please feel free to do so. Alrighty, so now we'll get into our work group updates. The Grasslands Initiative, so we set up our 5 goals, and from that we came up with some top priorities of areas that we would like to focus on by developing work groups. 3 of those have been rolling already, and we're looking at adding a 4th one. Some of you have expressed that education specifically is an area that you would like to be involved with, and now's your opportunity. So if you're interested in being a part of the education work group, and that one's going to be looking for what gaps exist in grassland education and what can they be doing to fill it. There's a Google form on the agenda that you can fill out. One thing to note is if you're not aware, the South Dakota Discovery Center has also been doing some work on grassland education. So we'll certainly continue to be in conversation with them to make sure that we're building off of each other and not duplicating efforts. The next thing I want to share about is the Connecting Grassland Producers and Programs work group. So this work group is all about how do we help the producers on the ground be aware of and better utilize the programs that are available for them. While there's no set statistic that I've heard, the numbers thrown out are 15 to 25% of landowners really are coming in and conversing with the programs and learning about them and utilizing them. So our work group has been having some conversation on what do we need to do to get more people using it. And a lot of the conversation has come back to, we need to hear from the producers. We can make educated guesses, we can make some assumptions, but it would be best if we heard directly from the producers before we say what tweaks need to be made to both the helping producers become more aware of programs and maybe a little bit on the programs themselves. So before we just assume that producers aren't coming to these events to learn about programs because they're happening on a Thursday morning and that's a bad time for people, let's start to really figure that out. The work group is discussing some options right now. I would say the one that's the strongest in the lead right now is trying to do some surveys of producers to get some qualitative data and have some conversations about what are some barriers. And then from there, moving into more quantitative data with a bigger survey. So that's something to watch for. Another aspect that work group is doing is continuing to support existing hubs that are out there to teach producers about programs, specifically conservasd.org and habitat.sd.gov. So if you haven't familiarized yourself with those websites, please go explore them. On our last quarterly partner call, we highlighted a little bit more about conservasd.org. That's it was earlier in its development at our last meeting, but it's really moving forward at this point. And they also have a really nice calendar where you can submit events that are coming up. The last thing that I want to make everyone on this call aware, and this is where I'd really love to pool all the brains together and see what we're missing, is a piece that we hear about a lot is there's a lot of acronyms when it comes to conservation. And that can be a barrier in itself for a producer or just an individual who's trying to keep up. So we created an acronym listing. So if you go to that link on the agenda, you should be able to click it and open it. If it makes you feel better, it's a copied version. So if you think you're going to mix something up, don't worry. But that's a live document that you can type into and it will automatically save. If you can think of an acronym or some details about those acronyms, that should be available. So the work group would really like to welcome anyone on this call to contribute to that list. Okay, work group members, what am I missing? Each work group has roughly 10 people in it that's providing input. And so I got sent with their bullet points, but is there anything else to share?
Laura, Ryan here. I just make a note that the acronym listing, I don't think is linked in the agenda. It's just the text is all. So you may want to update that.
Wonderful. I'll follow up with an email after our call today, and I'll include that acronym listing that you can add to. Thank you.
Otherwise, I think you covered everything pretty well in that group. Yeah, we've kind of pivoted, I guess, a little bit from a larger survey to, like Laura said, that initial one-on-one interviews with some producers to really get some of the general information that we need to know first before we develop a full-scale, more quantitative survey. So.
That being said, the survey is really being designed so that all of the different entities that offer programs can get valuable data out of it. So if you would like to be involved in the conversation of those questions that will be in the interview, please let me know. We're also looking at sending out kind of the template of what we're hoping to learn from the interviews out to partners ahead of time. So you'll have a chance to review it then. But if that's a passion area of yours and you wanted to pick the brains of some individuals, feel free to join us in that way. The next one we're doing is the Grasslands Outreach. And the Grassland Outreach will work closely with the Grassland Education, but for a little bit different audience and focus. To start off with, the group's been going through and developing a communication plan. So there's so many opportunities, and they went through everyone's brainstormed list from those January meetings, a lot of great ideas of what they could do. And so it's been narrowing it down to, for this group, what's the most effective use of their time and resources. So they've been developing a communication plans, which has identified the key audience that they're going to be focusing on is young families, young adults, recognizing there's importance in all of the different audiences, and certainly they want to connect with everyone, but that's maybe an opportunity where they could have an impact. And helping those young families, being described as a little bit more in urban settings, but we recognize even in rural South Dakota, this is important. But how do we help them feel more connected to the grasslands and understand that the grasslands are there for them as well? Oh, the other piece that I wanted to bring up to this group is the work group is wanting to develop a hub. So many of the different entities on this call or as an individual might have a communication specialist on staff, and everybody's sharing similar messages, but they might be missing each other's. So they're going to be creating a hub where all of the different communications specialists can be connected to this hub and can share, here's an event I have coming up if anyone wants to use it. Here's a marketing campaign piece that we've got going if anyone wants to share that. And letting all of the different entities know what's available so we can have a stronger push with what's being made out there. So my ask to this group is that if you have a staff member that's specific to outreach and communications, and if you could send us their information, we will make sure that they get a direct invite to that. Outreach group, what am I missing? Anything else that you'd like to share with the large group?
I think you covered it well, Laura.
Okay, sounds good. Then our next work group, this is our third active work group, and then if we get the education work group going, this will be number 4, is the Grassland Conservation Strategy Work Group. And so I'm going to turn this one over. I think Lyle's going to give the group's update. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. I think, Laura, are you going to put something up for us to look at?
Yes, I'll work on getting that ready.
So we've met numerous times, and so far, the only thing we've been able to plow through is the CRP grassland statements, and ones that remain on the schedule in the near term, and we'll have a number of different topics that we're going to cover. The next one is going to be the sod saver provisions as they pertain to crop insurance. And while she's bringing that up, I will tell you that in the case of the sod saver, I know some of you are parts of groups that are also looking at that or are knowledgeable on it. And so at this point in time, we're just trying to educate ourselves as to what it is, what are the sticking points with trying to make it more effective, where are we going to get the pushback from other commodity groups. And so we're just beginning the discussion about the sod saver provisions. And so we'd welcome anybody's input into that. You can contact Laura or myself if that's something that your group might be working on. But the one thing that we did work on and come up with some policy recommendations is the South Dakota Grassland Initiative recommendations for USDA's Conservation Reserve Program, CRP.
You want page 1 or 2 showing? Lyle?
Page 1. We'll
Okay.
start with page 1. And so you can see that we've got a number of them on that front page. The second page will give a little more detail about each of these, but I'll just briefly go through each one of them. Number 1 is remove a 25% payment reduction for non-emergency grazing of general and continuous CRP while maintaining a 25% payment reduction for non-emergency haying. So, you know, what we're trying to do is we're just trying to make keeping grass right side up more financially beneficial for people that might be enrolled in this program, because the playing field is not level when it comes to grass versus some other commodities that they can produce. So we're just trying to look for ways that we feel could possibly benefit, because we know the history of many of the CRP programs is people fall out of them generally for financial reasons. So we're just looking for a way to incentivize people to keep land enrolled in grassland CRP versus taking it out and converting it. Number 2, increase the national enrollment cap to allow for more grassland CRP enrollment. The caps that are on there on CRP are designed back in the day when there probably wasn't a lot of grassland CRP included. And so we understand that the concern is when you put acres in continuous or the general sign up, that it's taking land out of monoculture crop production and enrolling it in a grassland program. But that's not the case with grassland CRP. But yet those acres are counted in the cap. Increase CRP rental payments. There again, it's a case where we're losing land from CRP, and most of the time it's due to the fact they want to put it to some other use other than grass. And so we feel that the payments, CRP rental payments, should be more competitive. In years when emergency use of CRP is authorized, no more than 50% of a general or continuous CRP contract should be hayed. We just feel that there's been some abuses of that when there's an emergency situation, and the wildlife suffer when you harvest 100%. If you have multiple years of drought, you know, you can shortchange yourself as a producer because you hayed 100% of it last year, and now what do you have left for this year? So we just feel that it would be better management practice if we only had 50% utilization or you know, removal for emergency haying or grazing. Next one, provide grazing infrastructure cost share support for all general and continuous CRP contracts. Just want some consistency there. And if people want to fence it, they want to develop water, there should be the option to do the cost share. The next one is the entity limitations. 50,000 right now is what it is. And Senator Thune, I know, has been proposing to increase it to 125,000. As rental rates have increased, that has remained the same. And we feel that it needs to be increased. When you stop and think about the subsidies, for example, with crop insurance, if there'd be a $50,000 minimum there, there would be a lot of producers that have a pretty substantial increase in their crop insurance premiums. So if there's a cap of 50,000 or 125,000 for conservation and CRP, some of our participants wondered why there's a cap for CRP payments. So at least let's increase it to 125,000. Next is remove grassland CRP from being counted towards the county enrollment cap. Currently, there's a cap of 25% in a county that cannot be exceed that amount that's enrolled in various conservation programs such as CRP. And we question that there should be a cap, because in the case of grassland CRP, really, we kind of understand why maybe continuous in general should be included in that cap, but really grassland CRP should not. The last one is remove a 1-year ownership requirement for CRP. Currently, if you have land that you've purchased, you have to wait 12 months to enroll it in grassland CRP, or to enroll it in the continuous in general. And we just think that that requirement should be removed, because many people make management decisions prior to them even bidding or buying on a piece of ground. And we'd like the CRP program to be part of their initial thought process when they acquire a piece of property. So I'm giving this quick overview, not asking for input here, but telling you if you do have some comments or want to add to anything that I've said, reach out to Laura, myself. There's others that are on this call that are part of our working group, and just reach out to one of us and we'll be happy to listen to what you have to say. Thank you.
And I'll be sending this out with the follow-up as well, so don't worry if you were trying to ferociously scribble this all down as he was going through. And this side of the document also explains a little bit of that rationale, although Lyle made some additional good points. So please watch for that. Thank you, Lyle, and thank you very much to the work group. They have been having a lot of conversations, hearing from a lot of different individuals to come up with those recommendations. Anything else from the work group that other work group members would like to share? Okay, that also being said, when we're discussing any of these work groups, one of them has jumped out as something that you would like to really be involved with, and perhaps you didn't apply initially, please contact me if you would like to be a part of any of these work groups. Most of them are meeting in the summer, maybe a little bit less, but every 2 to 3 weeks, and all contributing their time and talents in different ways. So if you'd like to be a part of that, certainly welcome. It's a really exciting part of the Grasslands Initiative, is seeing these different types of brains coming together to solve some of these problems. At this point, we're going to move into our partner updates. We've got some different entities that have signed on for the agenda to give an update. But like I said, if you're listening to these updates and you yourself would like to share something, we certainly welcome that as well. With that, let's move into our first update from Tate Lantz.
Right away, I'm going to pass the buck. Jen Wurtz is on with us today. She's the EQIP coordinator for the state of South Dakota. She's going to give us the update on the Joint Chiefs opportunity that we have in the south central part of the state. So Jen, hopefully you can jump on.
Good morning, afternoon, I guess it'd be for everybody. Yes, we do have the Joint Chief project going on. Friday is going to be the batching date for that project. And we're going to target within the project area itself. We're targeting towards the lower, excuse me, sorry about that. The Lower Brule Reservation and the grassland, Forest Service grasslands that are right adjacent to the Lower Brule Reservation as the 5 mile buffer of those two areas. And then next year we'll go to the full project area again. Hopefully getting some funds a little earlier in the fiscal year so we don't have to make last minute decisions. So right now we're just still taking applications. I know of probably a handful so far. I haven't had a chance to actually get back out to the field offices to see if what they've received for applications yet. But I would take any questions that you may have.
Unmuting myself. Jennifer, would you mind throwing your email in the chat if anyone wants to reach out?
Sure can.
Thank you. Tate, if you're ready to give the update on behalf of the Central Grasslands Roadmap.
Yeah, you bet. I was just gonna pile on a little bit on the Joint Chiefs
Please.
opportunity. We don't have them very often, so it's kind of an interesting program for South Dakota. Obviously, they're a lot bigger Forest Service pieces of ground in the Western United States, so they utilize it quite a bit more than we do. But we have had a few in South Dakota, so it's this is quite a bit different. Usually, you're in a forested area or heavily forested area. This will be a good opportunity for us to treat some of those woody encroachment areas in that south central part. Moving on to the Central Grassland Roadmap, Maggie Hannah, the director for the roadmap, is on her way to Chicago for Land Use Change Summit at McDonald's International Headquarters. I think some of you probably are aware of that, but it's kind of that's a big deal for us. Obviously, this grassland thing is catching some big names when McDonald's is asking us to come and provide input. So I know Maggie will represent us well there. I think most of you know most of the history behind the roadmap at this point. It basically started back in 18 or 19. I didn't get involved until 2019, but it's a group of 8 core groups. We don't need to go through all the history of that, but Maggie did give me some updates from what she's been working on. I guess I will say there is 11. I mean, honestly, the structure is very similar to what the South Dakota Grassland Initiative structure is. We have a steering committee and there's 11 working groups. Some are more active than others, but we definitely want this group to realize that there are opportunities for folks if they want to be involved in those working groups. Open to anyone. We want more participation. Just like I said, to round out the opportunities for input. She wanted me to, I'm just going to go through the highlights for Strategy Area 1 partnerships, engaged in the review and promotion of the joint venture business plan. I will add these things to the chat as I get done here. I don't want to do it while I'm chatting because I'll lose my chain of thought, but I'll put them in here afterwards so you can grab them. We're currently focused on relaunching the state and federal agency work groups. It fell off I guess the page a little bit, and Maggie's working to relaunch those. Working on fundraising efforts for Indigenous Kinship Circle and Mexico work group for them to hire coordinators. The Indigenous Kinship group has hired a coordinator, Cheyenne Ironman, and they're continuing the dialogue to support the partners in Mexico to hire and onboard a coordinator. Memorandum of Understanding, that's a big push for the roadmap. There is a member, it's been moving around inside of the upper circles of the departments for quite a while. Department of Defense, Department of Ag, Department of the Interior. The policy work group and agency partners have drafted an Grasslands MOU, obviously to elevate grasslands and ecosystems as a priority for those agencies to work on. So I guess, it's been moving around a lot, so it's really hard to say if it'll really ever be done, but that's what the group is working on and hoping to have it completed by November 2024, which it's been being worked on for quite a while. So hopefully that will get across the finish line at some point. Just hopefully it focuses the agency's efforts on understanding that grasslands are that important to all of the agencies and the country. Working to understand the status of other collaborative communication strategies, notably the JV8's American Grassland Campaign. I will add that to the link. It's a long document but obviously is very much in line with what this group is working toward, and also working toward understanding and how the roadmap can partner with the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists. That will be happening in 2026. That's an international effort. Like I said, we're gaining traction. We just need to keep pushing. That's a big deal for a lot of people and all across the world, not just in the United States, Mexico, or Canada. So kind of cool knowing that everyone in the world is kind of paying notice to what we're working on. Drafted a request for proposals for support to develop and refine the Central Grassland Roadmap Initiative communication strategy. Always working on the deliverables and the effectiveness of communications coming out of the roadmap. Also, the roadmap will play role as a host committee for a climate initiative retreat in November. Really not a ton of information on that as of yet. It's on the, I'll put that link in there, but really there's no information for it, but there will be coming soon. Strategy Area 2, funding and policy. They've been working with partners and the joint ventures to understand challenges and opportunities through the 2024 USDA-NRCS RCPP process. That was a wild time for obviously even our agency. We have an unbelievable amount of applications for the Resource Conservation Partnership Program. Our request for proposals that was due in the first quarter of July. We are working as an agency to get those categorized and funded as we speak, actually. National Fish and Wildlife Foundation tour with Cargill sustainability team and Yum Brands ambassadors was another opportunity that they took advantage of. They're working in partnership with General Mills in a metrics conversations to very much try to put all the information in one basket so people can understand what's coming out of those metric work groups that are being, that people are working on inside of the roadmap. She mentioned in here, state policy. Several states have started to lead on defining grassland priorities for their states. We're well aware of that. That's what this group does. And she is very much touting the work that's being done in South Dakota when she's talking to other states on what is being done and how much progress this state has had moving forward. Pushing the agenda of the grassland. Strategy Area 3, research and benefits, conservation and communities. There's the social science work group has been working, our social ecological work group has worked to define their visions and goals, as well as building a robust list of engaged partners. They've been working with the University of Wyoming Ruckelshaw's Institute on their research related to understanding social processes to achieve landscape scale conservation. So this group is well aware, the roadmap is very much in line with the fact that local communities are going to be a key in sustaining grasslands in the future. So Central Grassland Birds Working Group, bird modeling, they've been working on bird modeling data that will inform priority investments in conservation. This work is supported by an interdisciplinary work group to ensure effective use and deployment of the data. So, I mean, obviously that's just another tool for groups to use when they have funding available to hopefully hit, put your money where it counts the most. There's a movement in the woody plant encroachment group. Partners like the University of Nebraska Lincoln and South Dakota are informing and catalyzing a significant amount of work related to woody plants, hence the project that Jen just covered. And ecosystem service markets, ongoing effort to understand the current scope of the voluntary ecosystem service marketplace, as well as how to create access points for land managers. Probably a lot of work being done to farm to market, ranch to plate type work, so we can the producers can hopefully make more money on the products that they're providing. From here, they're gonna keep working on supporting the step down of the roadmap. Obviously, they realize that these groups such as ours are very important for actually getting the work done. The roadmap is very much an overarching type of a group. They're 30,000 feet looking down, and they're trying to help the states to implement the grassland conservation that that they see fit in their local communities. They're trying to finalize a scorecard and metrics that's been a long going process too. It's just a nice opportunity for us to provide a producer or a partner with just a real quick and dirty type of scorecard that says, hey, you're doing great, or hey, here's where we could do better. And then also to continue push to finalize and advance the memorandum of understanding that I talked about with the agencies. And there's a lot of work being done inside that roadmap with the Farm Bill. That's what Maggie gave me. I don't know if anybody has any questions, but I will definitely drop these other links in the chat as I finish up here. But if anybody has questions, I'd be happy to take them. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Tate, for the update. And like Tate alluded to, Maggie has been quite involved. She's when available, she jumps on our work group calls and is aware of what's happening in South Dakota. And we're all being mindful of what can we do by maybe connecting states like South Dakota who are active with other states or carrying the message up as well. So thank you for that. It's a great relationship that we are able to have with the roadmap. Josh, are you on? I didn't see his name. Or was anyone else available from the Audubon to give an update of what's happening with Audubon Great Plains? If not, I will let Judge speak next.
Hello, Judge Jessop, South Dakota Grasslands Coalition. Current funding, we did receive our NFWF grant. This is to pay for a communications person and half of the executive director salary. I'm going through the process. They have more information to filling out the grant type stuff is what's going on with it right now. And we've also submitted another grant recently for the other half of the executive director salary. And we have not heard nay or yay on that one, which is not surprising. That one, I think, was submitted late May. Any other questions, comments, gripes? I don't have anything else, so.
Sounds good. So we can look forward to those staff being added as well. Next one we have is Bruce with Ducks Unlimited showing an update.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. I'll try to share my screen here, Laura, if I can.
Yep, the arrow just happened. Oh, here we go. Okay, you should be able to now.
How's that? Can you all see that?
Yes.
And...
right now, though, the
There.
view is where we can see. Perfect.
Okay, all right, thank you. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit today about our latest RCPP project. We were awarded this project last November, and we have been negotiating a number of different agreements with the NRCS over the past several months, but have all those behind us now. So we're looking to have kind of roll this out, scale it up, and get the word out. And appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all today. The leaders in grassland conservation across South Dakota. You can certainly help us get the message out. Just a little bit about the program. Regional Conservation Partnership Program, another one of those acronyms called RCPP. This is a partnership with the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and this is delivered through the alternative funding arrangement. Basically what that means is that all of the primary duties associated with this project, all of the planning with producers and contracts and payments and all that is delivered through the partner instead of through the NRCS office. So all of the project partners will be associated with all of those duties, kind of helping us try to avoid putting more burden on the local field offices and get some complementary programs on the landscape at the same time. So Ducks Unlimited is the primary awardee. We are the one that have the agreements with the NRCS, but we have a whole lot of partners that are involved in this project. Fish and Wildlife Partners for Wildlife, Game Fish and Parks, Audubon Great Plains, Soil Health Coalition, and Grassland Coalition are all partners in this project, and all of these partners are very active and are able to facilitate RCPP projects as well as Ducks Unlimited staff. Now, the primary goal here is to find a new incentive model to plant marginal croplands back to grassland. This is intended for working land system. This isn't designed to be a set-aside program like CRP. We're looking for a new model to help producers plant lands back to grass that's designed for forage-based income, let them continue to make a profit on lands that are at the same time providing value for wildlife and all those other services that we rely on. So the big goal here is we're providing a 3-year annual deferral payment to the producer to plant lands back to grass, and they commit for a 10-year period to keep that land and grasslands intact. That's the kind of the short message there. And our overall goal here is to restore 25,000 acres in South Dakota back to grass. So a few more details Like I said, you can work with any of those project partners on grass seeding plan and facilitating an RCPP agreement. The deferral payment is designed to replace that loss of income that comes with planting lands back to grass. You're planting particularly native species, diverse mixes, and targeting marginal soils. Those can take 2 to 3 years before those grasslands become viable and available for any sort of haying or grazing purposes. So during that time, most producers are not receiving any income on those acres. And if you're talking, larger tracts of grassland in the hundreds of acres, that adds up significantly and can be a big deterrent for planting lands back to grass. So our goal here is to pay the producer to let that, plant it back to grass and basically just let it sit for a couple of years while that grass establishes. And then after that period, they can manage it as it works for their operation. So the deferral payments are based on the county average CRP rental rate, which are updated every year, generally in that January timeframe. And the annual payment is issued after the growing season. So, for example, if a producer is looking to seed some grassland this fall or next spring in May, they would receive their first deferral payment, next October in 2025, after they have left that land idle for the season. These are designed to be pretty flexible. So say we have a 3-year agreement to set that aside, and they have 2, favorable years with good growing conditions. And in year 3, they decide, I think this is ready to be raised. We can defer that last year's payment, and they can go ahead and get cattle on the grassland and use it as works best for their operation. The management plans are designed by the cooperating partners. Most of these restrictions are generally hay dates, around the July 15th time period to avoid missing the primary nesting season. And they have some sort of design to encourage rotational grazing of those grasslands. And if say, we're storing significant acres back in grass and the producer is in need of some complementary livestock grazing infrastructure for some fence and some water systems, our partners have options for financial assistance for those as well. So as we get open, the big goal here was to try to avoid batching periods. We wanted to be able to assist producers as they come to us. Sometimes you never know when they're going to get that aha moment and decide that they want to put some land back to grass. We want to be able to work with them right away on some planning to get that process rolling. I want to reiterate that the geography here is all of South Dakota as well. We typically tend to work in the eastern half of the state, but this is open statewide for all those producers. So to accommodate that walk-in scenario, we have a screening tool that we use, and basically this is just a process where a producer fills out an application and answers a series of questions related to the project. So the first step is to complete that application. Basically their general contact information, and then we have to double check with the Farm Service Agency that they are eligible to receive Farm Bill funding. So this is pretty similar to anybody that's used to working with an EQIP or a CSP contract. We have to go through those steps to make sure they're eligible. And if they're not, we can find a way to make sure that they fill out the right paperwork so that they are. So once they are eligible to receive funding and they are agreeing to seed cropland back to perennial grasses, and they are agreed to attend a grazing or soil health related educational event. So part of this process is we're encouraging our cooperators to, reach out to that awesome, mentorship network that we have in South Dakota, and hopefully, they get inspired by seeing some of their neighbors and some of those practices, and we get a little more bang for a buck with these projects. But they also agreed to fill out a brief questionnaire about their history of conservation practice use. And as I mentioned before, they agree to not convert those grasslands or wetlands within the project area, for a 10-year period. So if they're checking all of these boxes with their application, we can start working with that producer the next day. So we have just recently printed off last week some new promotional materials. We have these cards. That's kind of the front and the back. This gives a little background on the RCPP opportunity and what it's all about. The back lists the current RCPP rental rates. Like I said, they're based on the counties and where you live matters. Those CRP rates vary significantly across the state. So that's important information to have on the front end. So they know what, what we're talking about for cost share rates. And again, just to give direction to anybody that's potentially interested, we have these, the QR code there and a tiny URL website. Any producer can go to either one of these, enter in their information, basically just contact information in what county. We can get one of the local private land biologists to come out, give you some more information about that and proceed with the RCP application. So that's open for business there, or they can just reach out to, their local private land biologist that they're used to working with. And lastly, there's my contact information if anybody has any other questions on the project as a whole. If you have more information on specific lands project sites, I would go to the Google survey link, but otherwise you can sort of reach out to me at any time. And I had to throw a picture in there somewhere. This is just kind of a neat project in Beetle County. Tenant working with a landowner, and he was just tired of trying to fight planting crops into these areas that were prone to flooding and prone to salinity, and just not making a lot of money on those. And they worked out a system to plant those grasses, that's the green rows there, into the system, and instead rely on a much more resilient perennial forage system where he can receive income, creating hay or leasing that out for cattle. And that's kind of exactly what we're looking for here. Try to provide an option that allows producers to change their agricultural system to a grass-based system and something just more resilient in our tough South Dakota soil areas. With that, I certainly have any questions. Stand by for questions, or you can reach out to me offline.
I know we're a large group, but really we're all here to learn together. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to share them.
Hey Bruce, this is Heather Husband from North Dakota. I do have a question. You talked about attending a grazing or soil health event. Do you offer any financial assistance to cover registration for any of those events, or is that all on the landowner to do?
It's going to be on the landowner. We explored that option with the RCPP. That was kind of our goal, but it was kind of a sticking point in offering that cost share through RCPP. So right now we don't.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much, Bruce, for your overview and for showing an example of an RCPP in action.
All right, thank you.
Is Sean Grossel on today? I think we might be missing him, but Steve Riley is going to give a quick update from the American Bird Conservancy and share what they're doing with RCPPs as well.
Hey, Laura, this is Jim. Can I make
mhm.
a quick comment going back to Bruce's comments? And one of the things I know some conservation districts do, and something the coalitions have encouraged, is conservation districts to get involved in paying those scholarships. So again, it's an opportunity for many partners to be involved and supportive and pick up some of that incentive that Ducks Unlimited can't do through the RCPP, but there's other avenues out there, and not strictly just conservation districts, but I know there's some of them doing it. So I just encourage others to do that as well.
Thanks for sharing that idea.
So I'll jump in. It's pretty pertinent to what Bruce just discussed, and I thought I'd throw it out there just for food for thought. I've just been a part of a coalition in the Southern Great Plains that submitted 3 different AFA RCPPs, and all of them were kind of fashioned together. We have 3 different lead partners. ABC's taking one, TNC's taking one, and Playa Lakes Joint Venture is taking one. But like I say, they're all built on the same framework, and we're really focusing on trying to continue pioneering more of a model where we're paying for foregone income when a producer is doing something that is good for conservation. And we're trying to take that more directly into working ranches where we would try to pay rental payments like a CRP payment for ecosystem services provided. We all know that ranchers have always out of the goodness of their heart provided an awful lot of ecosystem services. And one of the ways to take some of the pressure off that we've talked about earlier today, where there are a lot of incentives that push people to make decisions that are other than ranching with their grassland. One of the ways to kind of work against that is to provide incentives, of course, to help people stay in ranching. And so we're looking at, particularly, we've worked really closely with a group called the Lesser Prairie Chicken Landowner Alliance. And in South Dakota, you're all familiar with Greater Prairie Chicken and Sharp-tailed Grouse, and this is their southern cousin that happens to be listed under the Endangered Species Act. And so part of this is to address recovery of that in the context of working ranches, and instead of it being a burden, maybe it ends up being a pathway to help manage the ranch, maintain it in a longer, more healthy manner. And so we've been working with the ranchers to try to come up with means that work for them. And a lot of what we're talking about, at least initially, is trying to make sure that we're providing adequate nesting and brood rearing cover for these grassland nesting birds like the lesser prairie chicken and greater prairie chicken going into the nesting season. And of course, sometimes that doesn't necessarily work within the grazing system that somebody has in play for one reason or another. And it's usually that it's going to be too expensive to change that and make it work. And so we're trying to come up with a means to, as one of the ranchers said, we know how to have more lesser prairie chickens, and that is to have more grass. And we're probably not going to have more grass unless somebody pays us to keep it out there at the right time. It's really fairly simple. And so we built these 3 projects around that, hoping that we can do some significant monitoring to demonstrate that we can in fact obtain these kinds of ecosystem services, and that it makes sense to help producers implement different grazing systems or patterns, things that will actually lead to a better condition for the birds, and not just kind of random acts of kindness, but something that's designed to have certain outcomes. So I'm not going to go into a lot more detail, except to say our hope is that if this model works, that we would hope that we'd be able to move that around, especially in other parts of the Great Plains, and kind of continue testing that. But the idea is to, in contrast, a couple of these areas are in the southern high plains of Colorado and western Kansas. One of them is in the Shinnerio Prairie in New Mexico, in eastern New Mexico. And then the third one, the one that ABC is actually hosting, should we get funded, is in the Flint Hills, which of course is tallgrass prairie and greater prairie chicken country. But so we're looking at providing different services. And just to kind of illustrate that, in the tallgrass prairie, actually one of the problems we have, most of you are aware of this, is that the systems that are in place burn probably more aggressively than we should be. And that consistent burning too often doesn't really provide for the kind of residual cover or what you might call thatch that is sufficient for greater prairie chickens to bring off their brood. So in the west further, where it's drier, we end up with not much thatch at all, and so there's not cover when the birds go into their nesting and brood rearing cycle. And so the notion that's and the way we've described this is we're going to pay cash for thatch. And in both cases, they're a little different. One is trying to make sure we have more thatch, and the other because of burning too often, and the other one is making sure we have more thatch by altering the grazing structure so that we can end up with that. So, but you could apply this to a lot of other ecosystem services. Obviously we'd like to be able to pay ranchers for all of the services that they're providing, or make available to them markets that would help pay for those things. But the notion is to start rewarding people. I mean, if you look at Grassland CRP, it basically is a reward system like this. Is a little bit more of a blunt instrument, but we're essentially paying ranchers a rental payment to keep the grass green side up. And, so that makes it a good program, right? That's what we're trying to do. But how do we kind of expand on that and help to provide even more ecosystem function through programs? So we're kind of an experiment, but be happy to keep folks apprised of how that goes, and hopefully we'll get funded.
Thank you and good luck with that. Any questions for Steve?
I have a question for you, Steve, or a comment.
Yeah.
So I'm a producer, and I happen to have created a lot of space for forbs on my ranch. And I noticed my neighbors like have almost a fetish against anything with a broadleaf.
Right.
But they're very useful plants, even for cattle. And I would be thrilled if there was anything I could say about keeping a certain percentage of forbs. And in a lot of cases, you just don't use herbicide on them, and you can have them, like a lot of cases. And so I'm spot spraying my invasive weeds, my noxious weeds that are on the list and that are really a problem, of spot spraying. And so I get to maintain, quite a level of forbs. And I like this is a great idea to look at specific services, because sometimes that's exactly what a rancher can do.
Right. Well, I think that there are, and we're already talking about that with, for instance, some monarch work that's going on. It's really about some forbs out there. And so we're not too far away from being able to talk more openly about that, I think. And a lot of people are already doing it. And it comes down to, in a lot of cases, we've been fighting weeds for so long that everything starts looking like a weed. And, there are a lot of plants, of course. And I mean, most prairies have several hundred species of plants if it's a healthy prairie, and we just don't know them all. And so when you don't know them, you might wonder if they're helping you or hurting you, and it takes a lot of work to figure that out and to learn them all. But I think it helps us if we have some systems that reward people for doing that, providing forbs. And I think we have to do a lot more talking about that at the local level. I know that in previous work that I've done where we've encouraged people to have more forbs, what it comes down to is, we'll have conversations with the producer about, it's hard to go to the coffee shop now because everybody's always asking me about those weeds. And so, we've coached them, well, when you get started, put them on the other side of the hill where they can't see them until you can bring them out and show them it's a lot more pheasants in there or whatever. But I mean, people got to live and people got to work through that, but we can help them by kind of demonstrating the values of those plants. And of course, one of the big values is that forbs have a much higher protein content than grasses. And, they also are really necessary for lots of different kinds of insects, which also have a really, really high protein level for ground nesting birds, particularly things like pheasants. When they're hatching out, the chicks are entirely insectivores. And if you don't have forbs, you're not going to have really good insectivores, so you're not going to have very many pheasants. Those kinds of things, when you start talking to people about it, they pretty quickly put it all together and understand that, okay, I need to learn a little bit more about forbs so that I can find some more balance here. And it's hard to imagine that people can't find some forbs that they like, because a lot of them are pretty. So.
Yeah. We could
Thank-
start with legumes. But yeah, thanks. I think there's a lot of places could have like a nice little local industry sideline for somebody spraying with an ATV instead of an airplane. Could really be nice for a lot of people.
Yeah,
So
shrubs.
I'm glad you're working on that.
Yeah, shrubs, if you think about shrubs, and I'm not necessarily talking about really tall ones, but the prairies have always had a component of shrubs, some of which are really small shrubs that are oftentimes lost in the grasses. And I'm thinking about if you go out into the Fort Pierre grasslands on a north facing slope, you might find a poison ivy patch, and people might say that's horrible. But if you go out there in the fall and harvest a sharp-tailed grouse, you might find that his crop is completely full of poison ivy berries. So that
Wow.
tells you a little bit about why we might want to have that shrub out there. And so you've already hit on one of the big answers, and that is, let's try to spot spray the stuff that's really bad, and, you know, and not broadcast spray where we don't have to. And that's can save money as well as a lot of time if you do it that way. So I think it's about just having these broader conversations about getting more out of the land than maybe you know, what you're doing right now. And that's what this group's all about.
Thanks for the question, Linda and Steve. Are there any other attendees today that have an update that they'd like to share with the group? Something that your agency or organization or otherwise is working on? And if you something's kind of sticking in your brain that you maybe want to share, but you're not ready yet, certainly encourage you to submit those to the newsletter as well.
I have one to share. So I'm Kate Rasmussen with the Sustainable Ranching Initiative with World Wildlife Fund, and we're working on a gathering this fall in September, and it's mostly producer focused, and we're also hoping to have some partners come as well. So if you're interested in the event, please reach out. It'll be a ranch tour day and then a day of like talks and kind of sessions and things. So if you would like more information on that, you can shoot me an email.
Can you throw your email in the chat, Kate?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Anyone else? Pete, what about grazing schools? Do you have anything to share there? So I like to put you on the spot and make sure your mute button's ready.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Judge already gave the coalition update. I didn't catch all of it, but we just completed the Eastern South Dakota Grazing School last week at the near Marvin at the Abbey of the Hills. I think we had 26 students, I believe 26 or 28, comprised of 9 or 10 producers, and the rest was a mix of federal and state agency and NGO staff. All the feedback we've gotten, you know, it's been pretty good. So I guess, you know, as far as the Grassland Initiative and this group is concerned, just realize those schools are ongoing. There's a final one is coming up in September 12th-ish around Chamberlain. Judge can give more information on that if he's still with us. And then we did, you know, our team is going to be meeting. We may be once again returning to offering a South Dakota Grassland Management School, which is a complementary school to both the grazing school, the South Dakota Soil Health schools, and our fire schools. So we haven't offered a full grassland management school for it's been 3 years now. And so if we do that in 2025, it would focus on all those grassland, you know, just given what Linda and Steve were discussing, it's a lot about that school is a lot of focus on restoration, management of the soils, and basically managing and maintaining existing grasslands through alternative tools. You know, we don't go deep into grazing and fire, because we talked about those at those other schools. I think that's about it on if there's any questions about that. But again, Chamberlain's coming up, so be aware of that. And
Thanks, Pete. And in the chat, Colette added an update from NRCS, so if you can take a moment and skim over that as well. Any other updates to share verbally? If not, the next thing we'll have an element that we wanted to make sure that we're including in these calls is hearing from producers. And maybe as producers, you weren't feeling comfortable giving a partner update when it was phrased that way, although you really are just an equal partner in this as everyone else. But we want to highlight a producer and something that they're doing around the state. So this month, we have Linda Simmons is going to be sharing about how she manages Brome. She'll have about a 10-minute talk and opportunity for questions there as well. And then if we have time, I'm hoping that we can do some breakouts and have something similar to small group conversation, since I know it feels a little more disconnected to be joining virtually in this setting. So with that, let me help Linda get technology going. I'll let her introduce herself and her work.
Can you see me? Yes, right?
We can see you. And
all right. First of all, I want to say thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to hear from people who are working with grasslands every day, and I love the broad focus of there's so many purposes, there's so many services that we get from the land. Then it just makes you feel good to hear about all the things that the lands can do for us. So thanks for having me. I'm coming today because I've had this pasture here that you can see on the slide, this 330 acres of native rangeland in Roberts County, South Dakota, which is in the northeastern part of the state.
Linda, I'm going to pause really quick to make sure everyone's getting the right view. Are you seeing just the screen, or are you seeing the notes as well?
I see the notes.
Let me switch it so everyone can see a little better. Is that clearer then for the map?
There's really good. Yeah.
Right.
And these cross fences are fences that I put in. Most of the fences are 15, 16 years old at least. And I did this because I knew with these lovely Fordville soils, there's really good soils on this property. The only reason it hadn't been broke up already was that there's large glacial artifacts, large boulders, and also there's a luck factor. And so we bought the north half, and then we had an opportunity, my husband and I, to buy the south half. And we stretched out and we reached out and we found a cattle partner, a partner so that we could get the whole piece and put it together. So there's just a great amount of luck to do with this unit being as large as it is in northeastern South Dakota. Because we're not on the Coteau Hills. We're down below that. We're in the Whetstone Valley, the Valley of Millbank, so we're surrounded by farmland pretty much. So you can show the next one.
And Linda, so how many years? Yes. Nope, you're probably going to get into it in the next one. I was wondering how many years
18 years or so.
There we go.
And for the first couple of years, I didn't. Back in 2008 is when we started the acquisition, but no one realized that I had a degree in range management. Really, nobody really asked me, and then I just started to really get involved in 2009, and didn't look back since. But anyway, like everywhere else in that area of South Dakota, there was a lot of brome, and I knew the optimum thing would be to increase the natives. And I was lucky I had some native warm season grasses that I could see, especially in the north half. And then the south half had large wetlands. And so that had reed canary grass, which is not the best thing to have, but it's still pretty good feed if you could use it. So I knew that rotating would be the optimum thing. And it was my cattle partner who said, let's put them out just as early as we can stand it. And let's test. So I said, we'll test the standing forage and see if it will support cows. Well, sure enough, it did, because it's eastern South Dakota. It's its own unique area. So sometimes we put them out there and it was snowing on them. And then when we took them home, it was snowing on them. And this is what's reduced the smooth brome in this pasture. I'm convinced this is a huge part of it, because it's reed canary grass is one of the very first things ready. Brome is one of the very first things ready. And if you're there to take it, then you can hold down those two grasses to a dull roar. And so in this slide, it shows what things were like when we got there. And this is just the grasses. The forbs will be the next thing. And that was a spectacular find. And you can see that smooth brome was really the primary grass, unless it was a wet ground, and then it was reed canary grass. And those things are fine until it gets a little warm and it gets a little dry. And then they shut down and they leave your cattle with very poor quality forage, very poor nutrition. And so by rotating, sometimes I would take then more or less 2 cuttings of brome in the spring, eat it when it's ready, and then get the regrowth. And I didn't worry too much about harvest percentage or other grasses. I mostly just picked out brome as the thing to be used up, just assuming something better could take its place. And we were lucky on that property. There's a good seed bank, and really other better things have taken its place. So you can see, like, by the time 2024 is here, you have to look for brome in my pasture. Like, when you drive around, you can drive along and not have any for a bit, and then you have to, oh, there is some, right? And you get isolated plants of brome, which is a wonderful thing to see, right? Instead of a patch, isolated plants. And so I know that part of the reason this happened is that long season that we graze. We even changed our calving from spring calving to fall calving, because it's easier to put out the not so pregnant cow early in the spring and not worry about stressing her system. And then it's easy to take them out in the fall and give them good feed, because my cattle partner we feed TMR, total mixed ration. So he has a feed wagon, he weighs all the feed, he mixes the feed. I even have the gains that the calves do when they're into feedlot, and it's just fine. It's this 3 pounds a day, 2.5 pounds a day, just what you want. And what's exciting though is the new things that have come, the secondary grasses that have come. There's grasses out there no one identifies. So here,
yep, so go ahead.
Yep, you can move on. We can move on to the next one. So this, where I had the AUMs per acre here. Now I know that looks high to you, and the truth is, I think it's actually a little higher than that, because some acres are underwater, especially this year. And so the AUMs are really, they're over 1.23. And I'm sort of embarrassed by that. I'm like, I know, like, it's supposed to be too many, but I really like the new species of grasses that have increased. I really like the weaning weights. I really like the drought resiliency of the pasture. So this is what it is, folks. This is what we're doing. Yeah, about May 1st to November 1st, 7 or 8 paddocks. I use the wetlands maybe up to 4 times a year if I need to, because we're in a drought. And the wetlands are doing really well. the diversity in the wetlands is really, really increased. Let's see what we have on the next slide here for when we talk about forbs. So I've got a different idea about forbs than I used to have. The leafy spurge was on the property when I got there. We still have it. I'm working on it with the beetles. I think Nathan Bueller on the weed board in Grant County, he's really kept on everything that SDSU has published, and he's a great resource. So I still have the spurge, but everything else is really dramatically changed. The goldenrods that have come, I feel now, goldenrod is not a weed. Goldenrod is a placeholder. If you don't have the goldenrod, you're going to get a worse weed. You know, if you really want to get rid of the goldenrod, what's going to take its place? Because the goldenrod is there because there's room. I got rid of brome. Goldenrod took its place. Goldenrod comes and goes. Your native grasses seem to be competitive right underneath the goldenrod, and you'll come back next year, a lot less goldenrod, a lot more side oats or big blue stem. Those plants have been compatible since the last glaciation. I think they're compatible today, but range management and rotation can give you open ground because you've gotten rid of brome, which uses its bud bank to cover the ground. So you've gotten rid of this brome, smooth brome cover of the ground. Well, you might get weeds because nature abhors a vacuum. Or if you're lucky, you get goldenrod. So I feel like all these forbs are my friends, you know, except for those actual weeds, the invasive plants from Europe that are just like the thistles from Europe. They're terrible. And what I'd like to say is that you need a perspective of like respecting those plants that are components of the natural ecosystem, and in respecting the services they might give you, like suppressing worse weeds, you know, suppressing actual weeds from Europe that will destroy your production. And you can move that slide. There you go. So I have a commercial herd, and I think I would take a few less AUMs if I didn't, or at least not take as many, the same AUMs every year. I would if I didn't make a profit. Definitely, you had a larger herd when you want them to eat brome and reed canary grass. But I think what's happened there is a lot about nutrient cycling, and what's slowed down nutrient cycling in a lot of pastures is the macrocyclic lactone group. And that's the group of the Ivomec family of parasite control. And it's devastating on the dung community that breaks down that manure. So just think about, you know, if you're going to lose all the nutrients in the manure, they're going to get tied up because you wanted to use this chemical wormer. Maybe you did. So we've been doing fecals, and we only worm the cattle when they have parasites. And it's amazing how few parasites the cattle are actually carrying. So if it's just called integrated pest management. If you have parasites, worm with the appropriate wormer in the fall when it does the best for your animal husbandry, and don't just dump this chemical on when the cattle are going to go to pasture and destroy their own nutrient cycling. So those are the things I'd like. And thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
I'm also going to throw up the items that you're thankful for. I really like that you included these. aspects.
Oh yeah, I've got a terrific cattle partner. It's just working out, you know.
Good.
And the great soils in this, it's just such a pleasure to have wonderful fertile soils. You just can make mistakes and recover. Fish and wildlife easement, that mattered a lot. And yeah, I'm just glad I have the place.
Photos that you sent.
Yeah, this is just a day in the pasture. I just thought I was hoping there were some entomologists in the crowd so they would enjoy the Lepidoptera.
Well, thank you very much for preparing this and taking the time to share with us today. We're getting a little snug on time. So Linda, do you mind would you be comfortable putting your contact, either your email or your phone number in the chat? Would you be, if somebody was to follow up with you with questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. And on that note, so if listening to Linda's presentation gave you an idea of something you would like to share happening on your own operation, you don't need to have the data and charts, although we certainly welcome it. Please let me know and we'll have that on our next meeting. If you noticed on the agenda at the bottom is our next quarterly partner meetings. They're going to be in person. I do need to correct though, the Brookings one is actually going to be taking place in Watertown. I believe. Yep, Watertown. And if you're also a part of, there's a meeting in the morning at those same locations for private lands biologists, so that if you're attending one meeting, you can kill two birds with one trip. So if you're worried that you have another meeting scheduled in that same town that day, we are aware of it and they're in coordination with each other. And so we're gonna have these 2-hour meetings to get together. I've got a few topics that I want to discuss, but I think it's gonna be a great opportunity just to visit. With that, I want to use the very end of this meeting to put you into small groups. Feel free to introduce yourselves. And I would love if you would brainstorm together and say, something that I would really like to see happen at these meetings is X, Y, or Z. And as a second piece to follow up on something that I would really like to see at these meetings is a broader audience of attendees. And I am so excited that each and every one of you is here, but I would love if we had even double that with some different populations coming in, different perspectives and different areas of focus. So if you have a friend or a neighbor that you could bring along, please know that they're welcome at those partner meetings coming up. So watch for more details on that. I am going to send us into a 5-minute breakout room where you'll be in a small group. I encourage you to introduce yourselves and chat a little bit about that, what you'd really love to see happen. And then have one person in the group assigned to send me a quick email and say, our group thinks that this is missing when we're able to get together with others in our region. We'd like to hear everyone's thoughts on that. So with that, I will stop talking. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to join us today. Thank you very much to our speakers who provided updates and those who were listening and asking questions as well. Watch for more emails from me, and we'll go into our breakout rooms now for the next 5 minutes. If you want to keep chatting beyond that, I'm certainly not going to stop you, but